This is Peter Simic with Renegade Bus. After stints with the Met and the Dallas Observer, music critic turned filmmaker Kevin McAlester said he had had enough with living in Dallas, and so he transferred to the New Times publication in Los Angeles. He had an ulterior motive for his move to L.A. He dreamt of someday becoming a filmmaker. Mr. McAllister's second documentary feature, Dungeon Masters, is a film about pursuing dreams, albeit in an odd way. The film follows three devotees of the role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons as they try to find meaning and significance, both in their imagined lives as elves and wizards within the game, and in the often grim reality of their normal day-to-day existence. The film debuted at this year's AFI Dallas International Film Festival. I caught up with Mr. McAllister at the bar at the Stoneleigh Hotel, and began by asking him how he felt about his own artistic career, while watching the futile efforts of one of the film's characters, who was trying to realize his own dream of writing a fantasy novel. I was thinking, watching a lot of the aspects of that film last night was the characters sort of lumbering their way through life, and the guy trying to write the book and then it not working out. And I wasn't sure if that was your first or your second film, but I mean, I'd imagine you can relate somewhat to that. I mean, definitely. I think if you're going to do something like making movies, there's that point where you think, am I a loser who doesn't know what they're doing, and I'm in a dream world, or am I actually doing something real?
I feel like that. I mean, first of all of the sort of real life stories that I follow with the characters, I identify with in some way, because that's what I think found. There were obviously multiple different stories that we could have followed, but those were the ones that were, I think, most personally that I could relate to on a personal level, and therefore feel like I wasn't just observing this world, but actually had some emotional connection to it. There have been times, not only in filmmaking, but just in life in general, where I feel like Scott quite often, because there's always the question when you undertake, especially a creative endeavor, because it's so subjective. But even, I can remember in college, like going in to take a written exam on a book, Sister Carrie or something. Right. I'm thinking to myself, is the professor going to know that I'm a total idiot, and that my level of knowledge is nowhere near his, or couldn't be for another 20 years. So the idea of the sort of fear of the unknown in terms of your own creative abilities and your own intellect, I think is very familiar to me. And I would assume, based on people I know who have gone through the same thing, that it's sort of common to anybody who tries to do that kind of thing.
Your background's music, so where did your interest, I guess, in doing something about Dungeons & Dragons come from? Did you know that these stories were in that material when you started? Or
this was a topic where people could talk really articulately and interestingly about what they did. And I was also very intrigued by the idea of sort of the fantasy life versus the real life. Because I feel like all of us have these elaborate dreams of what our life is going to be like, and sometimes you get close to something coming true, sometimes you don't. But it's really the moments. To me, it's the moments of small victory that constitute a fully lived life. And so, I thought it would be a nice way to be able to show these exaggerated fantasy lives and the small victories in real life that constitute, probably what we experience more often.
One thing I really liked about it is that, unlike a lot of documentaries you see, there's a cinematic aspect to it that seemed, as if you were shooting it as a fiction film. There's one scene where is it Richard on the couch, and as he's reading, the camera pans all the way back, or the last scene, which is very memorable, where it's shot as if it's an exact depiction of what Richard's saying.
Yes.
And how did you go about with it? It didn't look like luck; it looked staged. So how did you work with doing a nonfiction film, but staging shots that were meaningful?
None of it was staged in that it never was. Oh, I have this idea of you walking down the street through the fog. Let's go do that.
Right.
It was more like, show me what you'd be doing, or show me how you do this. Or if we were walking around Indianapolis, let's just go walk around Indianapolis in a costume because I want to take a walk. He wants to take a walk. So I would be there. In some instances, he would be something he'd do frequently. Like there's a scene where he's walking around Torrance listening to music. Like he did that frequently. So I went with him one time and figured out where the cool shots would be and just kind of set them up when we walked through and do that. In a couple of cases, there would be problems where the focus would be wrong or something, and I'd be like, "Can you walk around again?" But it was never like, can you do that ninja scene again? I didn't feel like there was any direction in that sense. So it was more a process of seeing what they would be doing and then choosing the thing. And obviously we shot a bunch more that we didn't put in the film. But choosing the stuff that seemed to fit what the kind of style we were going for, which was very, not handheld, a lot of, wide, composed shots. And then also, Lee Daniel, cinematographer, is amazing. So once he sort of understood that style, he would find shots and stuff that was happening that worked contextually. I did make a concerted effort to structure it and give it the feel of a narrative feature, because I feel like in the past 10 years, making documentaries has become so democratic. You can buy a camera for, at this point, you can probably buy the camera that we shot that movie on for $2,000.
Right.
You can edit it on Apple. You can shoot it yourself. And so I feel like what used to be called cinema verite, which is just straight, basically reportage that you edit into an idea, it has become so sort of intertwined with the mass culture of YouTube and home productions and stuff that I feel like documentary now, at least from my perspective, needs to be a little more, has to be a little more thought out, a little more stylized, a little more have a little more intention and structure in it. I think Werner Herzog said that 10 years ago that like in cinema verite is the accountant's truth, and I agree with.
I heard he said something like you can't make a nonfiction film anymore or something like that. He's always very true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and have you seen Lessons of Darkness?
No.
He made this movie, one of my favorite documentaries ever. But he made this movie, basically he took a camera guy down to Kuwait after the first Gulf War and shot the oil wells on fire and the fires being put out. And it's a short, but it's a beautiful documentary film, and it seems like it's just visual, and then there's a couple of interviews in the middle. But then he starts it with his voiceover about aliens coming to the Earth. It's amazing. Makes absolutely no sense. But then makes a strange kind of sense when you watch the whole movie. I mean, and I think, that's not to say that I don't think cinema verite was great. I mean, I think some of the best films of the 60s and 70s and 80s were cinema verite documentaries. But I think today, at least for me, I'm interested in doing something a little more elaborate.